Hey everyone, I'm back and I just wanted to do a second part to my Thio Relaxer video. So I'm also giving a second shout out to Cher Joan, who asked a wonderful question about me giving examples of Thio Relaxers. And I know I mentioned it in the previous video, but I totally forgot to talk about some other things, so I'm gonna make this like a part 2. I'm really sorry. I was actually very tired when I filmed the last one. So, oh, and also I want to mention, how many times, for those of you that film your own YouTube videos, do you get annoyed when you're doing a video and someone walks in and they ruin it and you try to edit it but you don't have the time? That's exactly what happened to my first part that was good, and I tried to make a second one and it was even better. However, I forgot to talk about this important point, and that is, what is the appropriate breakage that you should be doing with the Thio Relaxers? And this, usually you'll get different answers depending on what you'll read. Now, the correct number of bonds you want to break is roughly 80% of the bonds of the hair. Some say 90, but I always say it's a little high. I say 80% of the bond breakage is a safe range, because if you should overlap with another chemical procedure, you're also going to break more bonds. If we're using high lift hair color or lightener, and even certain types of color, if mixed with a high developer, can actually break bonds like a perm would. And that's why if you watch some of the bleaching fail videos on YouTube, some of the people that do the bleach, if they have very coily or curly hair, the curls are actually droopy and kind of like a frizzed straight afterwards. It's because they actually broke bonds by doing the procedure. So that's also part of the reason. And without getting technical with the percentage, because that's not really a good way to understand when your Thio Relaxer is done, you want to do the knot test. And basically what that is, you take a strand of hair with the product on, you wipe it off, and you tie a knot. If the knot is loose and it bounces up, you have to keep processing the hair. You also know that the hair is done during the knot test. If you tie the knot and the knot it stays, doesn't bounce back, that will tell you that you're ready to rinse and process. So when you're doing these Thio Relaxers, keep that in mind and make sure you read the directions, because some manufacturers also tell you to do the curl test, and that's by taking a strand of hair, wiping the product off, and checking it. If you see any visible waves, you would need to keep processing, and I prefer that method as opposed to the knot method. It's a lot more efficient. And what you can even see is when you have the product in and after you comb, you can actually see the curl start to turn into a wave and then the wave to start to droop. That's typical of processing. This is really something that's learned with time, and that's why I always stress, especially for any of my students or any of the classes that I go into that I teach, that when you're working with Thio Relaxer, please try it on a mannequin first. If you do a curly mannequin or even just perm a mannequin, and then you can learn how to reverse a perm. That's a really good way of learning how to use the Thio Relaxer. I also want to give you guys an example because it makes sense. When we have a perm, and hopefully we don't do this in a client, but on a mannequin, if we fry a mannequin's hair with a perm, that's actually the texture you get. It becomes straighter and smoother and frizzed. With a Thio Relaxer, it does the same thing. Obviously, you're not going to ruin the hair like this, but if someone comes in with a perm like this, it's wavy, and they want to take it out, you should put the chemical on and take it off that fast. It could work in about as little as 2 to 3 minutes or as long as 20 minutes. It really depends on the hair type and what's in the hair. Make sure that you're also checking the hair for minerals. If there's a product buildup, it's not going to penetrate, and sometimes you need to do 2 shampoos. So I also want to add that in. You're going to give 1 good thorough shampoo, cleanse the hair, and make sure you're using a clarifying shampoo, which is a shampoo that's a high pH, because you want to get all the product off. If there's any product, it's going to block the Thio Relaxer from going in there. On another note, if your client has henna, this is my own personal opinion, do not follow through with the service until all of their hair is grown out and cut off, because what can happen is the henna will do one of 2 things. At the best case example, the henna will do nothing and it will just block the product from going in there and you won't get a good result. At worst, extreme breakage, because if the henna has heavy metals in there, metal and perm, mortal enemies, it's going to cause a violent reaction, causing the hair to get very hot. It's going to smell and it's going to fall right off, and it's going to be like a hot gummy texture. That can happen with a Thio Relaxer if you're not careful when using it on hennaed hair. And the other risk is that if the henna is at uneven places in the hair. Parts of the hair can become straight and other parts can remain curly, and that can lead to a whole series of issues such as uneven porosity, breakage in certain areas. And what else was I going to say? Also, use your judgment. If you have a client that has like a partial highlight, so they have the upper area of their head highlighted and the underneath not highlighted, this is going to affect how you're going to apply this product. You want to apply it to the area underneath first where it's more resistant, because the virgin hair is going to be a lot more resistant to the product. So apply it there first. You might need to wait a few minutes and then apply it up here, because chances are this is going to take a lot longer, and then this hair up here that's been highlighted is going to process quicker. And that's why knowing where your highlights are they evenly dispersed, are they more concentrated, that will help you learn how to use these products. Because think of it like this: hair that is highlighted, you already have gone in there and beat up the hair a little bit, so some of the work is done for you. You don't have to go and make it more porous. Because the hair is porous already when it's been colored or highlighted, the product is going to penetrate quicker and break the bonds quicker, as opposed to hair that's virgin where it has to do some work to open the cuticle, go in there and break the bonds. On a second note, I think I covered all those points. Timing really depends on a lot of things. Make sure you're doing the test. Make sure you know how many bonds are being broken. It's really over 50%, and don't get like stuck on that number, and don't really quote me on that either, because I have not cracked open my Lady book. I just kind of go by the test example. In terms of, what was I going to say? In terms of knowing the pH of your products, that may come in handy if you actually have a pH test strip. You can get it at health food stores. Do a little experiment on your own and test some of the products, and that will help you kind of gauge your product. I prefer to use a lower pH product because a lot of the hair today is beat up with flat irons. It's hair that is, potentially put through the ringer with color. And if your manufacturer says that you can use demi-color, this is just my own little personal preference as a stylist. I prefer not to do that, because demi-color can still open the cuticle. So what you're doing is you're going to open the cuticle again, and you may not get the nice straight results you want. I prefer to do it the old school way and wait the full 2 weeks for the hair to fully reharden and then go in there and color. That way the straightness is locked in and it's not going to frizz, or it's not going to go back to the curly texture. If someone, and this is another big point before I end this video, if someone comes in your chair and they say they've been using a relaxer and they don't know what it is, make sure you're asking questions such as, does it have 2 components? Because if it has 2 components, what's going on in my mind is I'm thinking it's a no-lye relaxer. And then ask them, say, did you get it at the drugstore? Did it say no lye on it? Was it like a cream that you had to put on? And if they say yes, at that point, what I would tell them is that we're not going to do the Japanese straightening service or the straight perm until we go in there and we cut the hair and we gradually grow it out. Because even if you try to do this, you can still fail big time. If the hair has previously been treated with a lye or no lye relaxer and you go in there with a Thio, you're going to destroy the hair. So that's just my own little caution, tale of caution, if you will. If someone is using metallic hair dye, that's a big no-no. You cannot work with the hair in that case. Just kind of be smart with these. And I don't mean to say it like that, but basically, if you don't feel comfortable doing something, Thio can go very wrong, even though it's a lot gentler and more compatible with color and bleach than regular lye and no lye relaxers are. It can still cause extreme damage in certain cases. And in some cases, if someone has a lot of highlights or the hair is a little damaged, what I'll do is I'll just do the Thio, wait for the curl to get removed. I'll rinse for the 10 minutes, towel blot the hair, and neutralize. What I don't do is add heat, because if you add heat, you're going to break more bonds. And if the hair has been heavily highlighted or it's been very processed, that can cause a lot of damage. So, and I also want to mention too, you can get very creative and you can actually add some of the bond protectors, and I actually add these in my neutralizer. I don't add them inside the solution or the smoothing cream, the Thio cream. I actually add them in my peroxide neutralizer because it actually will rebond. And then I use a follow-up service to take the peroxide out of the hair, like an antioxidant. And there's all kinds of antioxidants out there, such as Malibu C, or the one that's on the ABCH website if you are a professional. So I'll use either of those two for about 5 to 10 minutes after the final neutralization service, just to get the peroxide out of the hair. It gets rid of the irritation, and it also can stop some of the hair lightening, because peroxide does stay active for up to 2 days after the chemical service. So this is my part 2 of my Perms 101 series, Thio Relaxers. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'm sorry if I forgot to mention some of these things within the first video. There's just a lot to explain and so little time. So I'll see you guys soon for another video in this topic.